Okay, next. Here we go. At this point, I'm not going to try and cover all 275 missions I flew over my 3 years in the Navy fleet, but just describe my duties during my 74 days in the combat zone during Operation Desert Storm. But first, a quick lead up to the war. As our aircraft carrier, the USS Ranger CV-61, left San Diego in December of 1990, our mission was clear. We were heading directly to the Persian Gulf to help support Operation Desert Shield in hopes that Saddam Hussein would pull his troops out of Kuwait before the UN deadline of 15 January 91. We made one port stop in the Philippines to load up on ammo and continued on our way. As we were in transit to the Gulf, the Chief Petty Officer in charge of our 16-man AW Aircrew Division chose me to be the Division Training Petty Officer. In short, my duty was to ensure all 15 AWs were well versed on every conceivable threat that they and their crews could come across while in the combat zone. Everything from AK-47s to surface-to-air missile systems to anti-aircraft artillery up to and including nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare agents, much of which was classified. As well, the commanding officer of our squadron, the commanding officer of our Viking squadron chose me to fly in his crew out of the other 15 AWs, most of whom were more senior and far more experienced operators. Besides the great honor of such a selection, the fact that this squadron commander would be flying the lead Viking on the most difficult and dangerous missions meant I was in for a wild ride ahead. Such dangers and the immense responsibility of trying to ensure the other AWs were as well trained as possible was constantly on my mind. Our commanding officer was a brilliant leader. Believing the Vikings were merely submarine hunters, other aircraft carriers in the combat theater were actually sending their Viking aircraft to nearby shore facilities so as to make more room on the flight deck for A-6 intruders and F-18 Hornets for bombing missions. Our squadron commander suggested to the Air Wing commander that the Vikings could take on Our squadron commander suggested to the Air Wing commander that the Vikings could take on the in-air refueling or tanking missions from the valuable A-6 intruders aboard our carrier, so as to free up the intruders for more bombing sorties, which the wing commander loved and said, make it happen. So our aircraft was fitted out with a refueling pod on the left wing, a Zuni missile launcher on the right wing, and instead of torpedoes, we had 4 500-pound Mark 82 iron bombs in our torpedo bomb bays. Our new role was that of armed scout. The Viking aircraft was the second aircraft to launch behind the E-2 Hawkeye off the Ranger the night Desert Storm began on 16 January 91. Just the sheer number of hundreds of Allied aircrafts all launching raids on Iraq and Kuwait that night was really scary. Mid-air collisions were a real threat. So complex were all these countless missions that night that our mission was curtailed because of a traffic jam of aircraft trying to negotiate the extremely tight airspaces between Iran's territorial boundaries, Saudi Arabia, etc., and negotiating that narrow corridor of the Persian Gulf. 17 January, next night, we did something amazing and record-setting. A giant port facility in southeastern Iraq was to be attacked, and our intruders were tasked with dropping anti-ship mines in the harbor to prevent them from having access to the wider Persian Gulf. This port facility of Qasr was heavily defended with surface-to-air missile and anti-aircraft batteries around the harbor. In order for this attack to take place, the Navy decided to utilize a new type of high-tech weapon known as a TALD. The Tactical Air-Launched Decoy is basically a super high-tech glider that once launched at the target would make the enemy radar operators believe that numerous aircraft were heading in their direction, causing them to open up their air defense batteries fully on that TALD versus a manned aircraft. 2 Vikings were tasked with the TALD missions that night, and of course our commanding officer had to fly the lead on that mission. Our job was to fly in at about 30,000 feet late at night and head directly toward the port facility. As the air defense weapons opened up on us, we would continue on that heading and launch the TALD in their direction. So picture being in the backseat of this aircraft in a steep dive at night, flying into the direction of all those tracers and missiles. Just as we were pulling off target, all the aircraft in the strike package from the USS Ranger began to check in safe over the radio, except for one of the A6 intruders. Aircraft codenamed Jackal 404 did not respond. Navy Lieutenant Tom T.C. Costin and Lieutenant Charlie Tuna Turner were killed that night when their intruder was hit by anti-aircraft fire after dropping their mines. Hours of gut-wrenching fear was burned into my memory that night, only to be revisited every night after that. Picture this, it's pitch black outside late at night and you're in a steep dive at 400 miles an hour flying directly toward numerous anti-aircraft batteries, and you're in the back seat, you can't see anything, you can only rely on the pilot to comment on the AAA and SAMs when he's not too busy flying the aircraft. The fear of not knowing if you have 5 seconds to live or 10 minutes, it was a paralyzing fear that had to be reined in. This is the text from my first air medal I was awarded. It states, U.S. Naval Forces Central Command. The President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Air Medal, Gold number 1, to indicate first award. To Dana Franklin Hardball, Aviation Anti-Submarine Warfare Operator, 2nd Class, United States Navy, for service as set forth in the following citation. For heroic achievement in aerial flight on 18 January 1991 as an air crewman in an S-3 aircraft while serving with Air Anti-Submarine Squadron 3-8 embarked in USS Ranger CV-61 as a crew member on a coordinated carrier Air Wing 2 mining strike on the port facilities of Qasr, Iraq. Petty Officer Hardball provided suppression of enemy air defenses support to the strike group. He successfully deployed two tactical air launch decoys to stimulate enemy surface-to-air missile radars, which were subsequently destroyed. His outstanding performance resulted in the first launch of a tactical air launch decoy by an S-3A aircraft under actual combat conditions. Petty Officer Harbaugh's courageous leadership and aerial skill in the face of heavy enemy fire reflected great credit upon himself and were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. The combat distinguishing device is authorized for the President S.R. Arthur, Vice Admiral, United States Navy.